if you have a question about the Army, he has probably experienced it or been familiar with it. And, you know, once he's going to go through some slides, kind of cover some things talking about MI. But this is a fantastic opportunity if you are interested in MI or interested in how MI touches the rest of the Army, your other MOSs. This is a fantastic opportunity. And, sir, I just wanted to also thank my National Guard brothers and sisters that are here with us today. Thank you for being here and kind of helping assist. But, sir, with that, I'll get off the stage and let you kind of talk, sir.
Okay, great. I don't know if I'm going to need a microphone. Can everybody hear me okay?
I think they're going to try to do it more for the camera.
Okay, okay, got it. Well, how we doing, everybody? Is it okay if I don't go up on the stage for the camera, folks, or you want us up on stage? What's best? On stage? Okay. All right, so me and Dart are going to go on stage here. And since we are more than 6 feet away from you, I'm going to keep my mask off. And, of course, I've been vaccinated in 14 days plus. Got my second vaccine on the 5th of February, so I think I'm okay. Hey, look, it's great to be here today with you. And as your boss said, or Colonel Knight said, I'm Tony Hale. I'm a soldier. I've been in the uniform for 32 years. I've got with me one of my battalion commanders, Lieutenant Colonel Dartanion Hayward, commands the 309th MI Battalion, and we came from Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Southwestern Arizona, largest military Army installation in Arizona, the #1 economic impact to the state of Arizona is Fort Huachuca. I didn't realize that until I got there. And, of course, every senator, our 2 senators, and 3 congressional leaders had to call me up and talk to me about Fort Huachuca. But let's hit the next slide. So Dart and I are going to tell you a little bit about the Intel Corps, a little bit about our experience. And you might say, you know, why are you here visiting us? Okay? So first off, I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. I know exam week is starting this week. And then I think we moved a day to the left from Tuesday to Monday because I'm trying to get to San Angelo, Texas tomorrow. And if you don't leave BWI before 10:45 in the morning, you don't get there in the same day. Because San Angelo is where one of my other battalions is at Goodfellow Air Force Base. So up on the slide there, you see I'm from small town, North Carolina. 1 stoplight. I went to NC State. I'm a proud Wolfpack fan. And since I have been in the military, anytime I'm in my dress uniform or my mess dress uniform, I've got on my Wolfpack socks. Okay? Because you got to be proud of where you came from. 32 years in the uniform. Been married 28 years. My wife and I decided not to have kids after I deployed to Bosnia twice and Kosovo within a 2-year period. And spent the majority of those 2 years deployed to either Bosnia or Kosovo. I'm hands-on, I'm motivated, that's why I'm here. Okay, in military intelligence, in the Military Intelligence Corps, is anybody branch assess military intelligence in here? Okay, we got some hands there. I like it. We have an issue gaining and maintaining minority officers. 13.6% minority officers in the Intel Corps. And the statistics have shown us that for quite a while. And I was with General Kip Ward this morning at Morgan State. He's a graduate of Morgan State, alumni. And I said, you know, sir, people have talked about this for years. We selected our last African-American general officer in 1996, and he retired, Major General retired Bob Harding in 2001. People have been talking about the issue for years. But unless we're out doing something and being actively engaged in it, we're doing nothing. And that's why I'm here, okay? To talk to you about hopefully assessing in the Military Intelligence Corps. Because I will tell you, it gives you a pretty good lifestyle. I didn't think I'd be in uniform for 32 years. I was going to do my 4 years active and 4 years reserve and get out and go do something else. But you see what I've done. Commanded company, battalion, brigade, and now I'm a 2-star installation commander, senior mission commander for Fort Huachuca. And I will tell you that during this past 10 months of me being the commander there, I took over in August of last year, I have spent more time on senior mission commander duties due to COVID than I have on my Intel Center of Excellence duties, just because of the 53 tenant organizations we have on the installation require my time to make sure we have a safe and secure installation, primarily due to COVID. And, oh, by the way, now we have the border issue with unidentified illegals, is what they call them, UDIs, coming across the border. And 3 weeks ago on the installation, we had 2 come up out of the drainage ditch that had been in the drainage ditch for about 3 weeks, so they were malnourished, etc., right next to our elementary school. So those are some of the issues that we're dealing with there. As your boss mentioned, Battalion Brigade, FORCECOM G2, Joint Special Operations Command J2, Resolute Support J2 in Afghanistan for 16 months on my last deployment, and SOCOM J2 before I moved out to Fort Huachuca. I've been deployed over 7 years since 9/11. That's what all those stripes mean right there. Not something I'm really proud of, because that means I was away from my family. And as you saw up there, I've been married 28 years. Only by the grace of God has that woman stayed with me for the last 28 years, because I haven't been home a lot. And, oh, by the way, Friday is Military Spouse Appreciation Day. For all of you married out there and spouses, make sure you thank your wife on that day, or your spouse, your significant other. We've moved 12 times, and I've been to 69 countries, both officially and unofficially. And I told you I came from a town in North Carolina with 1 stoplight. And I've been to 69 countries. Most on official travel duty, but a lot on unofficial travel, on leave, especially when we were assigned in Europe for 5 years. So, as we were getting ready to come out today, you know, I said to Colonel Hayward, I said, hey, we're going to wear ASUs, because ASUs kind of tell a story about you more than OCPs do. Okay, so, yep, you see all my awards. You see the Combat Action Badge, Ranger Tab, Airborne. You see how long I've been deployed. I've got my combat insignia on my breast pocket, and I was on the Army staff for a while. So your uniform gives a little history about you as an individual. Okay, and like I said, 32 years, I would have never thought when I graduated college that I would have been still in uniform 32 years later. Nor would I have thought when I left Fort Huachuca in 1995 from the Captain's Career Course that I would be back one day leading the entire installation. But look what can happen. I've got public education, grew up in a small rural town, went to high school, which was primarily a minority high school, 98%, played football, basketball, and baseball with my buddies growing up. Some of them joined the Army to get out of small town, rural USA. And one of my best friends, who made it to be a master sergeant, committed suicide in 2010 because whatever was going on with him, he thought it needed a permanent solution. And I will tell you that the Army last year had one of the highest suicide rates since 2006. But when I learned that guy committed suicide, I was in battalion command in Afghanistan deployed. It broke my heart. And when I went home from deployment, I went back to my hometown, went and saw his mother in this uniform, and gave her a flag that I flew in Afghanistan the day I found out he had committed suicide. but he had made it out of our town and made something of himself, was a master sergeant in the Army, and somehow thought his problem was too difficult and he had to take a permanent solution for it. But that's kind of me. I'm going to let Colonel Hayward give a little bit about himself. Dart.
Next slide, please. Good afternoon, Bulldogs. So I tried to keep this a little simple here for you. Of course, that's the title in my name, but who I am is Dartanion J. Hayward, or Dartanion Hayward. Many people just call me Dart for short. I got my name from the Three Musketeers, Porthos, Orthos, Aramis, and D'Artagnan. Three Musketeers, but it was actually four main characters in the book. And I do that purposefully to say who I am, and I separate that from the things that I do. So I kind of like to drop a lot of little nuggets on you as we go along, and I give you my story here. Don't allow the things that you do to define who you are, because the things that you do can change. For now, I'm a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. It's a privilege and an honor to serve as a lieutenant colonel, but that's going to change eventually. And that someday, I'll no longer be in the military, 10, 15 more years from now. And you can't allow the things that you do temporarily to permanently define who you are, because then you'll constantly be changing who you are. So have that statement in your mind and forefront to know who you are immediately, kind of right away, get to know yourself. Because, like I said, it's an honor and a privilege to be a lieutenant colonel, but that'll change. It's an honor to be able to serve as a battalion commander, United States Army. Last I checked, when I was picked up for CSL, only 9% of your year group actually gets selected to fulfill a CSL billet. So it's a small contingency of personnel who actually get selected to serve in a CSL billet. Have the honor of serving as the 309th MI Battalion Commander, which is on Fort Huachuca, as General Hale was telling you. And what's amazing is that it's such a small community, the intelligence community, is that you kind of bump into people over and over again as you go throughout your career. When I was stationed here at the NSA at Fort Meade in the 704th, and at the time, Colonel Hale was the brigade commander when I was there. So it was pretty amazing when I arrived at Fort Huachuca and they identified who the new commander was going to be of the MI Corps, and they were like, it's going to be General Hale. I was like, I know that guy. So it's always a good thing to know that you'll bump into people throughout your career. Where I'm from Philadelphia. I was born and raised in North Philadelphia. I went to the Pennsylvania State University, or Penn State. When you go to Penn State, they make you say the Pennsylvania State University. It's like ingrained in you as a freshman, the Pennsylvania State University, because you don't want to confuse it with the University of Penn. Just like when you watch on college football and they're like the Ohio State University. I think it's a thing that those English professors get a kick out of. Why I do what I do? Well, it's servant leadership. I think many of you in here are probably here for the same reason. You have a desire to do something that serve others, to be a patriot maybe, or to just look for something to do that's greater than just yourself. One of the reasons, like I said, why I do it is servant leadership. Another little nugget, I like to define leadership based off of what the Army doctrine says, as well as an excellent author and a leader who I love, who passed away. His name was Dr. Miles Monroe. So smashing together those two definitions of leadership is a leader is a person who influences others through inspiration by providing purpose, motivation, and direction to be the best that they can be, and it's void of intimidation and manipulation. So at the end of the day, I only want what's best for other people. I have a desire and a passion for people. And I think many of you in here have that same desire and passion for people. That's why you served. That's why you elected to do ROTC. And how we do it is we're lifelong students. You're lifelong learning your craft, learning what you do, learning yourself, learning others, and always pouring out. Before I turn it over to General Hale, I'm going to leave you with this nugget, and we'll talk more as we go on, is that trying to encourage you to pursue your passion, pursue your purpose passionately. So whatever it is that you're created to do, pursue it passionately. As I said, growing up, I always had a desire to serve people. At the end of the day, I love people. That's why I do what I do. I wasn't always intel. I was branch detailed. So I was an armor officer first. Then I transitioned over into MI. But as you can see, before then, I was enlisted. In 1997, my freshman year of college, I knew I did ROTC. And I was like, well, why do I want to be an officer and don't know what it's like to be enlisted? If I'm going to lead someone, I want to know what it's like to lead who I'm going to lead. So I always had that mindset of wanting to know what it was like to be the person who I'm leading. Intel is kind of that same way. Being combat arms, you have to give information to the combat armed soldier. So what better way to give information or intelligence to the people who you're supporting than to know how it is to live and to be one of those people you're supporting. So I was branch detail. But in pursuing your purpose passionately, when the purpose of a thing is unknown, abuse is inevitable. So it's key that you understand who you are. It's a lifelong journey. Understand your purpose, pursue it passionately, and let no one or nothing stop you from doing that. And again, thank you for choosing the career path that you're choosing. Thank you for deciding to do something that's greater than just yourself, and just pursue it passionately.
Thanks, Dart. I think this is working, because we're going to do a little tag team here on our slides. So you got the Chief of MI up here to talk to you primarily about Military Intelligence Corps. But as I just did some quick math, Dart and I have 51 years of service. So when we get to questions, you can ask about anything, okay? 51 years of experience up here on the stage. And I was an SMP cadet when I was in college. Dart said that he enlisted when he went to college. So we've seen all sides of it and multiple deployments and everything else. So next slide. So why do I want cadets to assess Military Intelligence Corps? So if you see on the slide there, we are a part of national security. We're a part of the intel community. We're a part of national power for our country. You can see all the things that you can do as a military intelligence officer. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was going to college and joining ROTC. And my uncle, who was an ordnance officer, who had gotten ready to retire as an 06, a colonel, he said, you know, you might want to think about military intelligence, because there are so many things that you could do outside of the Army in the military intelligence field with some of the skills and experiences you'll pick up as a military intelligence officer. I said, well, what that might be, you know? And he said, well, there, you know, at that time there were 17 intel agencies across the government. Now there's 18 with the addition of Space Force. He said, you're going to learn how to think critically. You're going to learn how to problem solve. You're going to learn how to take a lot of disparate information and put it together to give your commander a recommendation. You're going to support commanders who are fighting the enemy. You're going to be able to deploy to all these different countries. You might even do some exquisite intel and like a special mission unit. Okay, and I will tell you that I've done all that. The other thing is, in every organization within the military, you have the institutional, you have the operational force. There are military intelligence officers and soldiers in the institutional, the operational, and the special operations community. So wherever you may want to serve, there's an opportunity. As Dart said earlier, he was a branch detailed officer. We get 50% of our MI officers through branch detail, because normally a branch pyramid is like a straight pyramid. The intel pyramid is inverted. We need more field grade officers, more lieutenant colonels and colonels than we need lieutenants and captains. So, next slide. So what kind of jobs do we have for lieutenants? For a lieutenant coming right out of college, being commissioned as a second lieutenant in military intelligence. And to some extent, you can say that some of these jobs are for any branch, especially platoon leader, company XO. Well, in MI, we have assistant battalion S2, potentially a battalion S2 as a lieutenant. And then you see, of course, what the detail process could be. Yes, we detail from infantry, armor. We also detail field artillery, chemical, etc. It doesn't have to be a combat arms primarily branch like chemical. You can detail chemical into MI. But those are kind of the assignment types that you will get as a second lieutenant or first lieutenant in the Intel Corps. My first assignment after Airborne and Ranger School, leaving Fort Huachuca, was as a Battalion S2 of an armored battalion in Korea. 2nd Tank S2, 1992, was my first duty station after OBC at Huachuca, Airborne School, and Ranger School. A second lieutenant, when I got there, immediately promoted to first lieutenant, was the Battalion S2. Today, normally captains are the Battalion S2. But those are the opportunities that are available for lieutenants. Now, Dart's going to tell you a little bit about what he did as a detail officer.
Yep. So as a branch detail officer, when I went to the Armor Officer Basic course, back then it was in Fort Knox. Now HRC is there. Now Armor School is at Fort Benning, home of the maneuver. But upon completion of the basic course, I went to Germany, and I'll tell you the real story. I was supposed to go to Ranger School, trained up for it, was ready to go. 2 weeks before my Ranger School slot, before graduation, I tore my meniscus disc in my knee. And they were like, there's no way you're going to go to Ranger School on that knee. So I had to go to Germany right away. A few of my friends, they went to Ranger School. I went on to Germany first. By arriving there before they did, I was able to get a platoon ahead of time. So I got a platoon within about 2 months of being there, and I was already in Iraq by that point. My friends who went to Ranger School, by the time they got there, they had to wait 9-10 months before they got a platoon. So it kind of worked out in my favor. So I was platoon leader while I was in Iraq, 03 to 04. Then you are selected for a second platoon based upon how you do, considering all the platoon leaders within the battalion. There are 3 specialty platoons within the battalion. It's your mortars, your scouts, and your support platoon. Those are your 3 combat arms specialty platoons that you give to your top lieutenants. I remember being on a checkpoint. I was in Iraq, and the battalion XO comes down. He says, Dart, come walk with me. So I jump off the tank. I'm like, how's it going, sir? And he asked me, he said, which platoon do you want, mortars or scouts? I'm like, scouts? Couldn't stand mortars. I got mortared every day. I was petrified of mortars. He said, good, you're getting a mortar platoon. I'm like, why'd you even ask me? I didn't have an opinion at all. Didn't have a dog in the fight. So as you go in your career, you realize that those officer moves are made way before they even consider to ask you anything. So I ended up going to the infantry mortar leader course called MLOC. Then so I got a mortar platoon. Then I went to my second deployment, which was 05 to 06 in Iraq. Then after that, it was time to transition over to MI. At that point, I always said, I'm only going to do 4 years in the military. So the reason I was selected or I chose to do branch detail, I put it on my list, and I got my first choice, which was armor, branch detail, MI, branch detail, armor. So at the end of the 3 years, it was time for me to go over to Intel. Then I come over to Fort Huachuca. And I arrived at Fort Huachuca, and they asked a question. They said, we need instructors who have experience in combat. I raised my hand. I just came back from combat 3 months ago. And they said, good, we need instructors to teach over in the BOLIC, which is the Basic Officer Leader course. And I taught the Army Warfighting functions there for a year. Then I went to the Captain's Career course. Then I ended up getting 2 company commands at Fort Huachuca, and I became a speechwriter for the CG at the time, who was General Custer and then General Potter. So all of that happened within the course of, 6 or 7 years in the military. What I realized was I wasn't at a disadvantage like I thought I was going to be compared to my peers who were purely MI. And it's because, although I was branch detail, I was still set up for success because I knew what it was like to be the person who you were supporting with intelligence. Because, as you learn, intelligence really does drive the fight.
So how many Ranger Challenge students we got in here? Any Ranger Challenge folks? Great. So I will tell you that Ranger School was the best school that I've been to in 32 years in the Army. I learned a lot about myself. I learned about small unit tactics, of course. But Ranger School was the best school that I've been to in the Army. Even though I lost 35 pounds when I went in Ranger School, I came out looking like a POW, okay? I sold my car to my Ranger buddy because I was going to Korea and couldn't take my car. He needed a car, so he bought my car. Lifelong friends were made in Ranger School. and you get a lot of time to think about yourself and what you're doing in life when you're laying in a foxhole for 8 hours a day pulling security while the patrol leader for the next patrol is coming up for the planning the operations order, right? But Ranger School was the best school that I think I've been to in the Army. I remember it to this day. The piece that Dart said about being a combat arms guy before he became an intel officer. So I tell that to every lieutenant that's at BOLC. To be a good intel officer, you need to know maneuver better than you know the enemy, or just as well as you know the enemy. Because as an intel officer, you want to talk to the commander in terms that he understands. How best to do that? By knowing the blue force maneuver. Then you got to know the threat. You got to know the red. So the best thing you can do is be an expert at both. Your combat arms brethren, they only have to know blue. They don't have to know the order of battle, the enemy threat, the range of an air defense weapon or an artillery weapon. You do as an S2. And you've also got to know the blue side of the house as well. You've got to talk to maneuver commanders and not geek out on them like intel guys like to do all the time. If you get up there as an intel guy and you're briefing your brigade commander and you start throwing out all these acronym and wazoo things that, you hear about in the intel community, he won't know a thing that you're saying. You got to talk to him like he understands maneuver. And then you've got to know both blue and red maneuver. Next slide. Okay, so a lot of folks say, well, intel's not tactical. I will tell you that at the tactical, operational, and strategic level, there's always an intel officer. And it starts most of the time at the tactical level. So look at all the places that you could go as an intel officer, as a company grade officer. You've got Forces Command on the far left side. I've spent about 15 years of my career in Forces Command. You've got Intelligence and Security Command in the middle. That's INSCOM, the acronym. And oh, by the way, there's about 20,000 intel professionals in INSCOM. Thank you. And then on the right side, you've got Special Operations Command. Well, I've spent about 12 years of my career in Special Operations Command. I went to a special mission unit coming back from my assignment to Germany in 2001, right here close to outside of NSA. I wore civilian clothes every day to work. I deployed to Afghanistan on the 12th day of October 2001, and I was in roughs. I had a goatee, a mustache, long hair. When I came back after 9 months flying into BWI, my wife didn't know who I was. On that deployment, I worked with one of the three-letter agencies for the first time in my career. It started with a C, and I went and picked up a briefcase. What do you think was in that briefcase? $1 million. What did I do with that money? I took it and gave it to a Taliban warlord, who was going to fight with U.S. forces. So a warlord up in the north who had trained a bunch of guys, and they were going to fight against the Taliban with coalition forces. And I literally went to an airport in the middle of nowhere in Afghanistan on a little fixed-wing plane, met a guy, picked up a briefcase, and flew out to another place to hand it over to the warlord. That was the first time I worked with the agency, right? But you can do all those things in intel. From the highest level, of course, being in the Pentagon, briefing the SecDef as a SOCOM J2, all the way to the lowest level, being the Resolute Support J2 in Afghanistan for 16 months, knowing every time a mortar round hit a fob or outpost, or any time troops were in contact, but also knowing what was going on in all the countries around Afghanistan. So Pakistan, India, what China's influence is, what Russia's influence is, what was going on the western border in Iran, what was going on in the stands up north, okay? Knowing all that from an operational level into the strategic level. You can do that in Intel.
Absolutely. The places you go, the people you meet, the networking you get to do is uncompared to any other branch. All of the agencies that are involved, as General Hale said, there's 18 different agencies that are in fact that touch intelligence. The good thing is that with intelligence, you will always have a job in the military and outside the military. And the networking that you get to do in intelligence carries you on for the rest of your career. So it's an intelligence career and profession that extends past the U.S. Army. When I first met General Hale, as I told you, I was in the 704th. He was the brigade commander. That is one of INSCOM's SIGINT brigades that provide support to the National Security Agency, or to the NSA. I actually served at the NSA for 7 years. And while you're in the NSA and you're assigned there, you wear what you call a blue badge. There's different color badges, which means they consider you an actual NSA employee while you're there. And you get to network with all sorts of people while you're there. Senior civilians, foreign partners from different countries, and they don't forget who you are. You know, to this day, I still get emails, phone calls from people who I worked with while I was in the agency, and they want to see how you're doing, see what's going on, because although the Army is a community within itself, the intelligence community, the IC, is another microcosm within itself, and people know each other, and people talk. While I was there, when General Hale was the brigade commander, he went on to go be the SOCOM J2. While he was the SOCOM J2, I was the executive assistant to the director of operations at the NSA. And I would often see him come back into the agency at times, and I'm like, at the time he was a colonel, I'm like, what is Colonel Hale doing here? And it's because even as the SOCOM J2, he was still what we call nested or connected to the NSA, as well as the other agencies, NSA, FBI, CIA. They all intermingle, they all communicate. So within intelligence, you'll always have a job.
Next slide. So where could you go? Basically, all over the world. Primarily the CONUS-based organizations down on the left, Fort Hood, Fort Bragg, Fort Lewis. That's where we have our corps at, our 3 corps in the Army. And then, of course, Bliss, Campbell, Carson. But every division has a MICO in brigades, has a Division G2 and a G2 staff. And then at the corps locations, you have that double with the corps staff, etc., and the expeditionary MI brigades, the EMIBs. Top 3 locations, OCONUS, you see there. You know, Germany, Hawaii, Korea. We've got USARAF, because they combined USARA and USARAF to USARAF in Germany for EUCOM and AFRICOM. You've also got Hawaii, you've got USARPAC in Hawaii, and of course the 25th, and then of course you've got USFK in Korea with MI Brigade there being the 501st MI Brigade. And then as you look at the ACOMs and the MACOMs and the direct reporting units, okay, and that's really across the Army. Detail officers can serve in all those locations as well. But at every echelon, there's an intel officer. At the battalion, the brigade, the division, the corps, always an intel officer on those staffs. So next slide. So what's the career look like for a lieutenant? Up until about major on this slide. And the bumper sticker at the bottom really tells the whole story. It's a varied career path. It's not a straight line like a potential combat arms officer's job may be. He's got to be a platoon leader or XO and a company commander. Well, as an intel officer, you can be a platoon leader, an XO, an assistant battalion S2, or a battalion S2. You could go off and be a assistant brigade S2 as a lieutenant, okay? Then as you move toward captain, about the 3 or 4 year mark, you'll come back to Fort Huachuca and go through the Captain's Career Course, or Triple C, as we call it at Fort Huachuca. The entire purpose of BOLIC, the Basic Officer Leader Course, and the MIC, the MI Captain's Career Course, is to give you the sets and reps as an intel officer so that you understand and can do in your sleep the military decision-making process, that you can do MDMP multiple times, like clockwork. You know it in your head. You know about collection management. You know about targeting. You can lay all that out for your battalion or brigade commander. You know how to articulate what the enemy is going to do. And, oh, by the way, how the enemy is going to react to a friendly maneuver scheme. You've got to be able to do that. But then, as you go through the MIC, come out primarily, you're going to be a battalion S2, assistant brigade S2, company commander as a captain. But you do have an opportunity to get broadened. You could go be an LNO somewhere. You could go to a functional intel course like HUMINT, SIGINT, counterintelligence, GEOINT. You could go to some of those functional courses and get that skill identifier as an officer as well. When I was a FORCECOM G2 in 2015, we had 12 BCT S2s get fired. You know why they were fired? They couldn't do their job. They didn't have the sets and reps as an intel officer to keep up with the brigade commander, to stand up in front of him and brief and articulate what the enemy threat was going to do. They couldn't lay out the most likely, most dangerous course of action. The brigade commander doesn't have time to train you when you get to that level. He or she expects you to know your job. Our job is the MI Corps, and my job is the Intel Center Commandant. I wear like 4 hats, is to make sure that you don't get fired, to make sure that we prepare you for your job. And as you see there on the bottom right-hand side, self-development. It is every officer's job to continue to self-develop, to continue to learn something every day. I got on a flight yesterday from Tucson to Phoenix. That was 24 minutes. From Phoenix to National was 4 hours and 34 minutes. I read Admiral Bill McCraven's new book, The Hero Code. And it talked about integrity, compassion, resilience. It had a chapter with 10 chapters of the book that laid out a hero code in every chapter with an example. Now, I'll use some of those examples as I continue to give LPDs and talk to lieutenants, captains at the Intel Center or anywhere in my career like I'm doing right now. Okay, but it said it was basically similar to the Army values. Okay, if you consider these values, you'll be something more than yourself, is what Colonel Hayward was talking about a while ago. Dart, anything about a career?
Yep, yes, sir. Regardless as to which branch you may assess and go into, every branch has a career path for it. When you get in and when your basic course, they'll show you whichever course you're in, the career path you'll have to take towards success. And every branch will have these things called key developmental or KD jobs. They're what's considered the hard jobs within your specific branch. If you want to progress and go ahead and go further, pursue the hard jobs. But while pursuing the hard jobs, you have to remember that the person who's in charge of your career is you. So self-development, as General Hale was saying, becomes extremely vital in order for you to succeed. You're going to get a whole bunch of information thrown at you when you're in your basic course. You're going to get a whole bunch of information thrown at you when you're in the captain's career course. Everyone starts off with the same information. Everyone gets the same toolbox, but not everyone succeeds as well because not everybody's applying the tools the way they should be. I remember as a platoon leader going to Iraq after coming out of the basic course, I was laughed at because I packed a whole bunch of stuff in tough boxes and mailed them to myself, knowing I was going to Iraq to take over the platoon. It's like I set up an office in Iraq while we're in combat. Why? Because as a maneuver guy, it becomes very important to understand when it comes to your equipment and your maintenance. So that's what I dove into, equipment and maintenance. That's why I ended up getting a second platoon within the combat arms world. Why? It was self-development. All the other platoon leaders had the same tools given to them, but they didn't apply them the same way. Because why? You're in charge of your toolbox. What are you going to do with your toolbox that's given to you when you're at the basic leader course? What are you going to do with your toolbox once you leave the MIC? Apply what's given to you, put them to use. Turn the wrenches, turn the screwdrivers, and apply the information that's given to you, and you'll succeed. What also is key in succeeding is making sure that you have people in your corner that's supporting you along the way. General Hale is one of those people. He's one of those people who actually puts what he says into practice. And it's one of the reasons why we're here, is because as he stated in the very beginning, military intelligence has a very low percentage rate of minority officers within military intelligence. But you have to do something about it. You can't just talk about it. You have to do something, put action to it. And not having an African-American GO in 25 years, 18 years ago, that's something that's pretty obvious that needs to be fixed. So he did something about it. He's going to the HBCUs. He's going to the universities and the colleges to talk to cadets about branching or selecting military intelligence in order to better the Army, better the branch, and broaden people at the end of the day. So he's doing something called mentoring. You got to have a mentor in your corner. You have to have a person who's an advocate for you, and you have to have a person who's a sponsor for you as well. So that's very key when it comes to developing along your career, is to making sure you have mentors, advocates, and sponsors to support you along the way. And those are keys to success. Those 12 BCTs, S2s that were fired, had they had mentors, advocates, and sponsors, they probably would have learned a long time ago how to be prepared before getting into the job they were going into, or if they were falling off, how to course correct.
So Dart talked about the network. He talked about mentoring. When Dart came to work for me at the 704th in my brigade, I had never met him in my life. But someone that he was good friends with at CGSC had been deployed with me for a year, and we had worked together every day. And that person called me and said, hey, this Major Dartanion Hayward, he goes by Dart, is coming to your brigade. He is a great guy. You should give him a shot. So as Dart said, I put him in charge of the Army TK at NSA and the 704th MI Brigade, which is really the Army ACE, analysis and control element, for the Army, for INSCOM, for the G2 at that strategic level. And I had never laid eyes on Dart. But somebody told me about him who I had a lot of trust and confidence in and would not steer me wrong. And I've been tracking him ever since I met him back in 2012, 2013 at 704th MI Brigade. So, next slide. So, how can you go military intelligence? Well, first off, graduate. Have good grades, right? You can't commission without the degree. We take into account both your academic work and your military science, your PMS work, here in ROTC. That all goes into the gonculator to include how you perform at advanced camp, right? Do PT, physical readiness training. We want a fit, disciplined Army. Everybody taking the new ACFT? What do we think? Pretty good? It's okay? What we're finding is most kids that enlist in the Army and go to basic training can actually pass the ACFT on the first shot. Okay? Volunteer for branch detail. We get 50% of our MI officers at the captain level by branch detail. And we talked about that earlier. Okay? So, when you come to Huachuca, if you're a branch detailed officer, right now we're doing a little transition course that prepares you for the MI Captain's Career Course. We may, down the road, put the transition course in the front part of the Captain's Career Course, depending upon funding. But right now, we're doing a transition course. And then you get into your course with your fellow captains as they come into the Captain's Career Course. Find an MI unit. Have a mentor like Dart talked about. Okay? The cadet leadership training, CTLT. Great opportunity. Go to an Intel unit and do CTLT. It's on you to represent yourself, okay, in your cadet file. I have a chief of OCME chief, the Office of the Chief of MI, which I'm the chief of MI. I have a lieutenant colonel who works for me who does nothing but look at files 80% of the time as we move into the accession months. You can go online and update your file. What are the biggest things that we see that are wrong? Grammar and spelling errors. You know, put it in a Word document, spell check it first before you put it in your file, right? You have to sell yourself. It's just like being in the Army. Who's responsible for your file that goes in front of a promotion board? You are. You're responsible for making sure all your OERs are in there, making sure you have an updated photo, okay, even though we don't use photos now. But you got to make sure you've got all your correct administrative data, your OERs, your awards, all those things in your file. If you don't take time to make sure it's right, who are you putting at jeopardy? Yourself, okay? And then if you have any MI relevant experience, the fact that your uncle, you know, brother, aunt, somebody like that is MI, it means something to us. We have a general officer's daughter right now who wants to go MI. She did not put in her cadet file that her father was a 3-star general. Really? So we know that she's grown up in the Army, right? She's a military brat. We probably want to know that because what does that tell us about that lieutenant, soon-to-be lieutenant? Probably that she's going to stay in the Army longer than 3 or 4 years because her dad's a career officer, right? And then put MI number 1, okay? Or sign up for branch detail. If you don't put MI number 1 and you don't sign up for branch detail, you will not get MI. It has to be your number 1 choice because we're selecting so few. If it's not your number 1 choice, we know you're not that committed to military intelligence. So, what's my bottom line to you? You can have a varied career field. You can learn and have a lot of experiences as a company grade officer, as a military intelligence officer. It's not a single lane road like some of your combat arms officers in infantry and armor, etc. And they're all greatly needed. But as Dart said a few minutes ago, intel drives operations. Before any operation happens, you have to have intel that give you the enemy situation. Anywhere, any echelon, intel drives ops. Dart, parting words here, and we'll pause and go to questions because I want to leave plenty of time for you to ask any questions that you have.
Yes, sir. So, if you made the mistake and didn't put MI first, there's still an opportunity. It's called the VTIP, Voluntary Transfer Incentive Program. So once you've done either 2 or 3 years within your first branch, you can contact HRC or contact your branch manager, and you can assess over into MI if you have a different branch right now. But what happens with that is that your branch has to be willing to let you go, and Intel has to be willing to accept you, because at that point it becomes a numbers game of balancing to make sure all of the branches have the proper representation of personnel within their specific branch. I'll leave this one with you as a parting thought. Am I driving the fight? Being a combat arms guy prior to coming over to MI, I had this mentality that everyone supports maneuver, which they do to a degree, but I had this mentality of that maneuver is better than everyone else. and that's not true. Maneuver can't do what maneuver has to do if intel, signal, transportation, quartermaster, doesn't matter which branch, AG, if those other branches aren't there to support, maneuver can't do their jobs. And when it comes to intel, we have the ability, because of clearances and everything else, and because of all the organizations that we have the ability to tap into, we can give a full picture to the maneuver commander before he or she, that's key, he or she, as a maneuver commander, can make a decision. That's intel's job, to make sure we provide a full picture of what's going on. Currently in the 309th, as the battalion commander, we train military human intelligence, counterintelligence, because they're different. CI and human are different. So it's counterintelligence, human intelligence, geospatial intelligence, and 35 Tangos, which is your systems maintainers and integrators to help make all your equipment work together, sync, and speak. So within our battalion alone, we train 4, but really 5 different MOSs, because for CI, counterintelligence, there's enlisted and officer as well. So that's 5 different MOSs that we're constantly training to make sure that we provide those soldiers to the maneuver force to be able to support whatever the maneuver commander, he or she, may need.
Okay, so we're going to pause there. I think we were scheduled to at least about 14:30, but Wesley, we've got any amount of time. We stayed an extra half hour at Morgan this morning, but we'll answer any and all questions. It doesn't have to be about intel. You got 51 years of experience up here on the stage. You know, you might want to ask us a question that you were too afraid to ask your professor of military science or something like that, because he saw you every day. And, you know, I'm going to fly to San Angelo, Texas tomorrow, and I probably won't see you again for a few months or so at least. All right? So any and all questions. Anybody got any questions? Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? Roger. Okay. Thank you both for coming here today. I wanted to know about top secret clearances and languages. Do you have to learn a language or gain a top secret clearance in order to be a military intelligence officer?
Yeah, so language, no. You don't have to learn a language. Okay, I can barely speak English. All right. I did have Spanish in college and got my C and ran away very happily. Okay. With regards to a top secret clearance, yes. As an officer, you have to have a top secret clearance. Are there some times that potentially your top secret clearance may expire, be downgraded, et cetera, and you have to work on it, you know, to get something right? Potentially, yes. But as a rule, you have to have a top secret clearance to be an intel officer. A little bit different for enlisted soldiers. You know, they have to have, for example, secret clearances when they come to their AIT training, their advanced individual training. Some of them have to have top secret clearances, but they don't have to have it adjudicated until they graduate. All right? And the adjudication process, depending upon, you know, how many folks are in the queue, could take a few months or so. But basically, at the end of the day, most enlisted soldiers also have to have a top secret clearance. And, of course, if you learn a language as an enlisted soldier, primarily you're probably working at the National Security Agency or one of those satellite locations, NSA Georgia, NSA Hawaii, et cetera. And then, of course, you have to have a top secret clearance to get that blue badge that Colonel Hayward was talking about earlier. But yes. Any other questions? Go ahead and jump up. I see you getting ready.
Can you hear me, gentlemen? Gentlemen, good afternoon. How are you guys? My question is, what are some key traits that you look for in a successful officer?
Key traits I look for in a successful officer?
Yes, sir.
So I talk a lot about my 3 C's: character, competence, and commitment. 1, you have to have outstanding character, okay? That means doing the right thing even when nobody's looking. Competence, you have to be competent in your job. You have to know your skill. We're going to teach you that. At MI Bullock, we kind of give you that foundation. We talked about self-development, continuously learning. Okay, I have kind of a rule. Every day you should read, sleep, exercise, and think. Read something other than email. We do a lot of stuff on email, but read something other than email. Where do you get good ideas? Reading. I read that book yesterday, Flying to National. Sleep. Okay, you need sleep so that your mind stays sharp. Okay, this whole study about you only had to have 4 hours of sleep, that's BS. All right, I can tell you that for a fact. Exercise. How do you want to let off some stress? Okay, exercise. And then think. Think about what you're doing next. Think about what you're doing next week, next month, next year. I would submit to you, and you're a MS what?
I'm a 3, sir.
MS3. If I said, what are you gonna do for the next 5 years of your life? You probably could give me a rough outline, but you probably may not have it. Here's what I want to do. You may not have the plan all the way out, right? But read, see, exercise, and think. So character, competence, and then commitment. Okay? Committing in the Army is doing something more than just for you. It's being part of something better than yourself. You wear right now the best jersey of any team in the world. 193 countries in the world, every country's army wants to be like us Army, right? And we're part of a family, us Army. Everybody wants to be like us. We wear the best jersey of the best team in the world. Character, commitment, competence.
Yes, sir. So, actually, I stole that same thing from General Hale, and I actually tell that to my company commanders as well. But the other thing that I look for in the company commanders and the XOs that we have within our battalion and all the other officers who we come in contact with is, although you're a leader, are you still teachable? You have to be a lifelong, as I said, a lifelong student, and also understand that when you come out of Bullock, matter of fact, even when you're in Bullock, and when you come out of Bullock and you're a platoon leader, you're learning from your platoon sergeant. When you're a company commander, you're learning from your first sergeant. In Bullock, all of your instructors, not all of them, majority of your instructors are going to be NCOs. In Armor OBC, all of my instructors were NCOs. And I say that because you don't want to have the mentality of, because I'm an officer, I'm better. It's not the case. You have a responsibility as an officer as far as the charge and the oath that you take. You have a responsibility as an officer of being, you can delegate accountability, but you can't delegate responsibility. So you're responsible as the officer, yes, but as a part of the team, as a part of mentoring, as a part of developing, you're constantly being molded yourself. It's not until now that I'm actually older than my command sergeant major. So I'm actually, I've been in the military longer than my command sergeant major. I'm older than, but before then, my NCO was always more seasoned, the backbone. So as a young officer, specifically, lean on your NCO Corps, because as General Hale was saying, we wear the best jersey, and that's because from working with other militaries, from the Iraqi military to some of our foreign partners' militaries, what makes us stand out from them is really our NCO Corps. They don't have them. We have NCO Academy. We have various schools that our NCOs go to that makes our Corps very strong. So that's the advice I would give you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Next question. Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for coming today. I was wondering, what were your first days as an officer like, or what stuck out to you guys the most?
You said.
What were your first days as an officer like? Or what stuck out?
What were our first days as an officer like?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was commissioned in May of 1990, May the 12th to be exact. I remember that day because it's my brother's birthday, and he was upset. He was turning 12, I think. He was upset. He had to go to my commissioning on his birthday. He's 9 years younger than I am. I was commissioned at NC State University and went out to lunch with my family, and then I went straight to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, because I told you I was an SMP cadet, and my unit was starting drill on that Saturday. And we got commissioned on Saturday morning at NC State. So I drove straight to Fort Bragg, and the company first sergeant, of which I was the company XO in, came up and saluted me. I gave him a silver dollar because that was my first salute as I arrived to my company for drill. And then we started a 2-week FTX at Fort Bragg. At that time, I was in a mech infantry battalion. We had 113s. Even though I was an intel officer, I was a company XO because that's what I've been doing for 2 years prior. About midway through our company FTX for 2 weeks, the company commander's mother had a health issue, so he had to leave. He left Fort Bragg to go back home, take care of his mother. Here I am, the acting company commander for the RTEP that we were doing at Fort Bragg on 113s. I was like, holy cow. Then shortly after that, of course, I went to Airborne and Ranger School and actually got to my first unit of assignment there at the 2nd Tank in Korea. As a newly promoted myself first lieutenant, as I promoted myself en route while I was on leave, and showed up at the Turtle Farm in Korea for 2nd Tank as a Battalion S2. Now, as Colonel Hayward said a few minutes ago, the first person I went to as the Battalion S2 primary staff officer was my S2 NCOIC, who was a master sergeant. He was a 19 kilo. He was actually a tanker, an armorman, but he had been in the battalion for 3 years. He was married to a Korean wife. He had stayed in Korea. He had been in the battalion 3 years. He knew everything about the battalion. He knew where, because most of the time it's a 1-year assignment, he knew where all the skeletons were buried. And I learned a lot from that master sergeant who was my NCOIC. He didn't know a thing about intel, but I didn't need him to know anything about intel. I just needed him to be a soldier. He did everything with regards to physical security and all that kind of stuff. I did the intel along with my 96 Bravos, which was back then the intel analyst, for my battalion commander. But I latched on to that NCOIC so I could learn a lot from his 18 years experience and him being a master sergeant. So that was kind of my first short few months or so in the military, in the Army.
So my initial experiences as an officer was like May as well. I commissioned in May of 2002, May 10th, 2002. And I had a little bit of time before I went to my armor basic course. So I didn't go to my armor basic course until January of 2003. I needed that transition. I needed that ability to hurry up and get to my armor basic course. As I told you, I'm from North Philadelphia, so I need to get out of my environment as soon as possible. So when I arrived at Fort Knox, Kentucky, to go to my officer basic course, the way I was raised, I always had a lot of discipline in the sense of, taking orders and being responsible, things like that. So I look forward to the change. And I remember Sergeant Hickman, one of the instructors in the basic course, he said, you guys better listen because you're going to be over in the desert pretty soon. Half of you will. And we kind of didn't take it. We were like, whatever, this war will be over soon. Desert Storm ended in 100 hours. There's no way we're going to end up in combat. But I graduated that course in June, and in September, I was in Iraq, and I was there for 12 months. So it was a baptism by fire, but again, I had the toolkit, I was prepared, I took it serious because I didn't want to go back to the life I had before. So I really, the first few months of being an officer, I really had to take serious and understand that at any moment I could have ended up in combat, and that's what happened. So I think that our generation, when I say our generation, I'm talking about like your PM, your professor of military science, his replacement as well. We grew up in this environment of this high intensity, not this coin environment, counterinsurgency, constantly deploying, You could look at General Hale's stripes on the side of his arm and see how many times he's deployed. We were just constantly always going. So we had to take serious what we were getting ready to get into. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Good afternoon, sir. MS4. My question to you is, obviously, you're a busy man at your level. You mentioned you had your wife, and I'm going to say it's fair to assume you probably have children. What have you done over the years to balance having family and just dealing with that?
Yeah. So I got that same question at Morgan State.
Yeah, work-life balance.
Okay?
Yeah.
Work-life balance. And I will tell you that it's hard. Okay? It's hard the further you go up the ranks. All right? Because I do have a lot of time commitment against my time, and the most precious thing that a soldier wants and needs is time. A soldier wants predictability. They want to know when they can take leave, when they're going to have a 4-day weekend, when they're going to have a day off so they can spend time with the family. So for me and my wife, it's always spending quality time vice quantity time together. Okay? Now, what do I mean by quality? So we try to do a date night once a week. We've been trying to do that for 28 years. I left Sunday morning from Fort Huachuca. On Saturday, we went out the back gate of Fort Huachuca, went to a little vineyard, which had a live band playing. Sat down for about 2 hours with my dog, my wife, had a glass of wine, listened to the band, had a little snacks, and that was our date for this past week, because I was leaving Sunday morning. Okay? But quality time means putting down the phone, not checking your email, not responding to a text, and just putting the phone in a no-touch area. Okay, it sounds simple, but you put your phone in a no-touch area. If you have to go to that phone in a no-touch area on date night, you're in bad boo-boo, okay? If somebody needs me and it's that important, they're going to call, okay? There's a lot of folks, even between Dart, one of my battalion commanders, there's a couple of layers between Dart and me, right? But if somebody needs me bad enough, they're going to call me, you know, vice an email or a text. But it's kind of making that time sacred, even if it's just a couple of hours. They have to know that they're the most important person in the world. And I would tell you, 28 years is kind of like a partnership, okay? My wife was a career DA civilian up until I came to Fort Huachuca. I'm the senior mission commander at Fort Huachuca, so she cannot work on the installation. She's been a family advocacy program manager. She's been an ACS director. She's been a SHARP program manager for the Army and the Air Force at 3 different installations. And she cannot work because I'm the senior mission commander. Guess what that makes me? About that big, right? Because she's used to working 40 hours a week or more. And now she is running the best doggy daycare in Arizona for my 18-month-old boxer puppy that was on the first slide. But spending quality time no matter what. I was the aide to the Chief of Staff of the Army. We went to dinner one night in D.C. My phone kept going off so much, my wife finally said, "Let's go. I'm done. You can't take a bite of your meal because your phone continues to go off." And there was something going on important, but we were trying to go out to have dinner and date night. It just didn't work that night, right? And we literally got up and left, and I did not eat my meal because she was so tired of my phone going off and me texting while she's trying to eat. So it's quality time, and make it sacred, because if you don't protect it, guess what? You can always find time to do something with it. Always find something to do with that time that you are protecting.
Yep. So Contrary to popular belief, the military does not cause divorce. Society in itself has about, what, a 55% divorce rate. So it's not about being in the military as causing divorce. Whatever you invest in, you make a priority. So if your marriage is a priority, you invest in it, the quality time. And it's not the military causing it. So, and it's at every agency I've ever worked at, they say the same thing. Even at the NSA, we had that as a work-life balance concerns. So just being able to balance work between home and letting home know how important home is. And this month is also
Military Spouse Appreciation Day on Friday.
Yep.
Yeah, so for all you in uniform, I see a captain sitting right out here, right? You married? Okay, so make sure you go home on Friday. Take your wife something a little special. Say, Happy Military Spouse Appreciation Day, honey. I love you. I couldn't do this without your support. Okay? And I will tell you, it does get harder all the time. And it just pains me to see senior officers getting a divorce. I mean, my last boss was a 2-star general when his wife walked out on him, right? And this guy was, a 2-star. He's now a 4-star. His wife walked out and said, I can't do it anymore. Because sometimes we are just so switched on. Okay, I was at Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC J2, for 2 years. My wife will tell you to this day that that was the worst job I've ever had in the Army. Because I was always on. I was, had a sling line, had a dummy cord to my iPhone, my SIPR email that I could take anywhere I went. I had a SIPR iPhone that I could do SIPR email on my iPhone. I would go to a football game at NC State and have an RV for nothing but football tailgating. And in the bedroom of the RV, my laptop, SIPR laptop, set up with my puck, responding to emails as the JSOC J2 while we were supposed to be tailgating, right, before the football game. And then we'd go in the game and come out, and I would have to check all my emails before we could do anything. Take down the RV, get ready to go home, because I was always on. Now, a little bit different in that job, and I knew what I was going into, right? But it's all about making that person, as Dart said, the person or putting time and effort into that relationship. Because it's not the Army's fault a lot of times for divorces. And everybody in uniform who gets a divorce will blame the Army. Okay? So, good question there, buddy. But it takes a lot of work.
Good afternoon, sir. You did mention our 13% minority rate. What are the greatest challenges that minority officers will face in the workforce? And you could, go off your experience, both of your experiences, or, just possible significant challenges and how to overcome these challenges.
Okay. I've got a profile for hearing, and I don't have my hearing aids on today. So what's the challenge with minorities staying in the Military Intelligence Corps?
Yes, sir, and how to overcome these challenges.
How do we overcome the challenge? Okay, so as I said earlier, Intel senior leaders have been talking about this for years, okay? I talked to the last general officer, African-American, Major General retired Bob Harding, retired in 2001. I talked to him the day after I took command. He wrote a paper in 2015, maybe, 2016, and kind of laid out the problem. And people have been talking about it for the past 5 or 6 years. So I said to myself, if you don't do something about the problem, you can continue to talk about it all day long. But if you're actually not doing something about it, you're not going to make any headway. So, as you mentioned, I mentioned earlier, 13.6% of minorities in the Military Intelligence Corps. We're one of the lowest branches with minorities in our corps, in our branch. We see minority officers leaving between captain and major. There's a number of reasons why, and we have not specifically surveyed minority officers to say, why are you leaving at this time? But we have surveyed officers in general, and we have surveyed females in particular of why they are leaving. And it's your typical reason about, I want to find another career, I don't have good work-life balance, I'm not interested in deploying, I want to have a family, etc., etc. But I would tell you that for an African-American officer, as Dart looks up the chain of command, after the colonel level, the 06 colonel level, he doesn't see anybody that looks like him. Okay? And that's a problem, because I have nothing to look forward to. I can't reach that goal because there's nobody there right now. You've got, and look, I'm going to get very frank with everybody here, okay? You got to be kidding me that we have not had an African-American officer since 2001, not selected since 1996, okay? Now, in order to build the bench, it's like watching a horse race, okay? Anybody watch the Kentucky Derby on Saturday? My wife and I watch the Kentucky Derby every freaking year. We bet on our horses. We have this thing between us. We call her twin sister. We all pick our horse. We watch the horse race run, right? This year, how many horses did they have in the race? 20. 20, one of the largest fields in the last several years. Last year, they only had 11 horses in the Kentucky Derby. If you don't have enough horses in the race, a horse is not going to get to the finish line. Now, what am I talking about? If we don't put more African American and minority officers in brigade command at the 06 level, they're not going to have the opportunity to make general officer. Because what's one of the requirements to be a general officer? You've got to command successfully at the 06 level. This year, this summer, we are only putting one African American in brigade command. Mark Denton, colonel who just left the War College. Now, I basically fired a Caucasian 06, and I was able to pick someone on the alternate list to go in their position. And I selected an African-American male to go in that position because I had the trust and confidence in his abilities, have known him since he was a captain. My wife briefed him when he was a company commander at Fort Meade, even though I didn't know him that well. His reputation precedes him, and I selected him off the alternate list to put him in another 06 command billet this summer. If we don't have more horses in the race, we're not going to get somebody to the finish line. That's the way I see it. And as the chief of MI, now I have the opportunity to do something about it. So that's why I'm here at the oldest HBCU in the state of Maryland. Right here at Bowie State. I was at Morgan this morning. General Kip Ward, retired General Kip Ward, who is an alumni of Morgan State, met me there this morning at the door. He said, Tony, this is the first time a Caucasian general officer has come to Morgan State to do a recruitment and assessment like this for Intel ever. So we got to do something about it. We got to stop talking about it. So one, thank you for making time for me to come visit you guys this afternoon as you start exam week. Two, in the fall, Dart and I are going to make a swing up the East Coast. You can hit all 12 HBCUs coming up the East Coast from Georgia all the way up to Maryland, and you can hit them all in probably about a week if we line it up correctly. But we're going to go out and we're going to talk to everybody just like we're talking to you. And oh, by the way, I'm going to hit other colleges and universities and ROTC programs. Florida A&M, okay, Georgia State, just to name a few. Texas A&M has a big population. We go to West Point all the time to do cadet branch week, branch day, and all that good stuff. Okay, but where are we going to get most of our minority officers from? It's from ROTC program and branch detail. All right, so we got to do something about it. And then, as Dart mentioned earlier, mentor. I started a mentor program as the chief of MI for Lieutenant Colonel and Colonel 05 and 06 command selection officers. You've got to advocate for somebody. You have to advocate for officers to get in particular jobs. If you don't have a senior officer advocating for you to go into a particular job, guess what? You're not going to get into a certain job that you may want. Okay, look at the soft community. If I didn't have a senior officer advocating for me to be the JSOC J2, I probably wouldn't have gotten that job. But because of my performance in a special mission unit for multiple years, I had an officer advocate for me to be the JSOC J2 after brigade command. So in those particular positions that are critical positions, like sitting on a board for a brigade command board, okay, guess what? I get to do that as a 2-star general. Okay? Who am I going to advocate for? I'm going to advocate for guys like Dart Hayward, who I've known for a decade. Because we've got to put people in position to make it to the top so that others have something to look up forward to. And you can probably tell I'm a little bit passionate about this because it actually pisses me off. Okay? So, Dart, anything?
So that's eloquently stated because as General Hale stated, this is not something that's unknown. I can remember being back at Fort Huachuca for the first time when I was there in 2007, and I made that same assessment. Like, there's no African-American GOs in MI, but there are in other branches, and particularly like transportation or logistics, tons of African-American GOs, even all the way up onto the staff, the DA staff and the Pentagon. And back then, it was Colonel J.C. Briley. He was the chief of staff. I interviewed for company command. It's a long story. What he told me was, I'm going to help you put your boots on, but you're going to have to lace them up. And it's because you have to have someone advocating on your behalf. So him as being the chief of staff when he was at Fort Huachuca then, that's how I ended up getting my first company command. Then I got a second company command while I was there. What? He helped me put my boots on, but I had to lace them up. It was a lot of work. But it's the advocacy. And I'll tell you, without having senior leaders aware of the issue or problem, they have to do something about it. And that's what General Hale is doing. He's doing something about it because people have been talking about it for years. I'll tell you, the civil rights movement would be nothing without the freedom riders. So it's about everyone being on board, about really being serious about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's not just about African Americans. It's about females, about all minorities, and it's about our Caucasian brothers and sisters as well. It's about everyone having fair share and equality across the board. So we have to create those opportunities and changes.
So I'll give you a quick story. About 3 months ago, was selecting my next aide-de-camp. That's my aide sitting over there with the cord on his arm there, right? I wanted to select an African-American aide-de-camp. I had one interview. Within the first minute, he told me that I wasn't his number one choice, that he didn't want to come to Fort Huachuca, and his new wife, who he just got married, was scared of small town Sierra Vista. Now, I'm glad he was honest with me. But as I thought about it, and I think I told this story to Dart, and I know I told it to Mark Denton, I said, you know, it just upset me because who had mentored that young captain and actually mentored him about being an aide de camp? Because if you're an aide de camp, you got to be all in. You got to be in 100% of the time. He and I travel probably 2 weeks every month at a minimum. And we're not home. We work long hours. We're up early. We got in 2,400 last night. Okay? That's kind of the lifestyle we keep when we're on the road. He likes me taking red eyes. He likes me getting in early. And he likes me, you know, not staying at the hotel more than about 3 or 4 hours. But I said to myself, who mentored or told that young captain anything about interviewing with a general officer before he put his name in the AIM system for assignments now? Because in the first minute he told me he didn't want to come to Fort Huachuca. I wasn't his first choice. He had got a one-to-one match with HRC. He wanted to go to HRC. And his wife didn't think much of coming to small town Sierra Vista. Now, is Fort Huachuca in the middle of nowhere? Yes. Okay. Do you have the Wegmans and everything else, Costco's and all that stuff down in Sierra Vista? No. Can you get it in Tucson, which is an hour and 15 minutes away? Yes. I've been there 9 months, 10 months now. I go to Tucson at least twice a month. Not going to the airport to fly out somewhere. I go up there with my wife so we can go to Costco or, you know, Whole Foods or something like that, because you ain't going to find it in Sierra Vista. Okay? But is it a little small community, like a little family at Fort Huachuca? Absolutely. What am I doing next weekend when I get back? We got the Lieutenant Dan Band giving a concert Saturday night at Fort Huachuca. All of his students are going to be there from like 4 to 6, and then all the family members get to come from 7 to 9. Two shows, right? We have one of the biggest fireworks displays in the town of Sierra Vista, normally with a headliner band. I think last year was Chicago in Sierra Vista. If you know anything about, who's been to Sierra Vista, right? Why would Chicago come to Sierra Vista, right? Okay? But it just upset me that nobody had mentored that young officer about wanting to be an aide de camp. And he was the only one that was in the pool. I interviewed 6 or 7 different folks. He was the only African American that put his name in the hat. It just upset me. Any other questions? But we got to do something about it, okay? And I'm trying to do something about it. So branch MI, okay?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Cadet Colson. I have a branched MI for this year group. My question is, gentlemen, is there a ranger training program for the Bullock lieutenants? And what is the new MI battalion at Ranger Regiment like, sir, gentlemen?
What is the new MI battalion what?
I'm tracking that the MI battalion just stood up at a Ranger Regiment.
Yeah, the Ranger Regiment stood up an MI battalion.
Right, Roger. What is the day-to-day like for that, sir?
Yeah, okay. So, yes, is there RIP training, Ranger Indoctrination Program training at Fort Huachuca? Absolutely. I even did it in 1990 when I went through the Bullock course, which we called the basic officer course then. I went through it in 1990. We have actually a airborne Ranger L&O at Fort Huachuca. One of Dart's guys, I think, his S6 runs a RIP PT. My roommate came in to our apartment after we decided we weren't living in the BOQ and said one Sunday afternoon, hey, let's go to Kmart, because at that time there wasn't a Walmart in Sierra Vista. Let's go to Kmart and get black sweats so we can go to RIP PT in the morning. I'm like, dude, I'm not going to RIP PT. He's like, come on, let's go. So we went. You had to be there 30 minutes before everybody else. Oh, guess what? We didn't have to do PT with our class, which was good, because we didn't like some of the folks in our class. You know, they were kind of idiots. They had just got out of college. Okay, so here's the no. This is no shit. Okay. A lieutenant told me when I was staying in the BOQ at Fort Huachuca before taking command. This is in August of last year. COVID's going pretty strong. prior enlisted lieutenant. I got in the elevator with him. He's like, sir, you know, lieutenants in class, they just don't want to follow the rules. They just graduated from West Point or ROTC, and they've got a little bit of freedom, and they just want to go crazy, and they don't think COVID's going to affect them, and they're not following any of the rules or anything that's going on. Now, he didn't know he was talking to the next post commander, right? And I said, huh, that's interesting. But he was prior enlisted. You saw some badges on his uniform, you know. And he said, all they want to do is get their party on. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. So in a way, going to RIP when I went in 1990, we got away from the rest of the class. It was a little bit more mature group, okay, in RIP. Me and my roommate both went to Ranger School at the same time. We both graduated at the same time. We both went to Korea for our first assignment. It was the best training I've done in the Army in 32 years. Was it physically and mentally hard? Absolutely. Was it more mental than physical? Absolutely. I got to learn a lot about myself. When you're laying in a foxhole pulling security while the patrol leader's doing the op order, you get to think a lot. Think about what you want to do in life. Think about what you're going to do, you know, after you graduate next year, etc. More mental, I'd say 65% mental and 35% physical, because some people just can't. If you can make it through the first week, as they called BUDS, you know, Hale Week, the first week in Ranger School, you have to go through all your tests. If you make it through the first week, you can make it. But a lot of folks lose it up here, okay? But there's a RIP training program. It's great. And then I was the FORCECOM G2 when we stood up the RMIB, the Ranger MI Battalion, for the 75th Ranger Regiment at Fort Benning, Georgia. It's just like a MI battalion for a expeditionary MI brigade. I think they have 3 companies. They were standing up. It was a provisional company for the first couple years. The change of command here is sometime in June for the next guy to take over. This will be the 3rd Battalion Commander that was centrally selected by a Special Mission Unit Board, a SMU board. They have a UAS platoon. They've got, CI, HUMINT, SIGINT platoons. They support all 3 battalions in the Ranger Regiment. And somebody from the Ranger Regiment RMIB is constantly deployed to Afghanistan right now, supporting operations that Task Force 20 does in Afghanistan, at least now until the 11th of September. Okay? Anything?
When you get to Fort Huachuca, the RIP program, the NCO, one of the NCOs who actually runs it, is Staff Sergeant Avery. Just to give you a little background on him, he was actually in the Q course. Like halfway through, he had some issues with his family he had to take care of, so he had to pull him out. But talk about somebody who's high speed, willing to just go 100 all the time. That's what you have to look forward to. But he's extremely motivated. It's not the typical PT program that you're going to go through. Example, we did the Baton Death March about 3 weeks ago, 26.2 miles. Sergeant Avery did it with a rucksack on, full ruck, 50 pounds, while carrying a sledgehammer, and he ran the whole thing. But it was fun.
Anything else? I think we've gone past our time a little bit, but I will tell you that Dart and I will answer any questions that you might have. I know you're getting ready for exams. Just think about what ROTC has done for you to prep you for your exams. Even though it may not be a military science course that you're getting ready to take your exam for, just think about some of the skills and foundational leadership that they've already given you, whether you're an MS 1, 2, or 3, or 4, right? And getting ready to graduate and get commissioned. Okay? Think about the leg up that you have on your fellow college student getting ready to take an exam. All right? I know I learned probably more in ROTC than I learned in my other classes, okay? Because I kind of studied ROTC. I was a regimental commander with my fellow classmate who is also a 2-star general. We graduated on the same day, got commissioned the same day, and we're both 2-stars right now in the United States Army from NC State, class of 1990. I gave away my first green to gold scholarship about 3 months ago. Specialist Leiden, female specialist, applied to like 12 universities. She went to visit a whole bunch. She came back and brought me a Wolfpack coffee mug and said, "Sir, I chose NC State." That made me really happy, but I didn't force her into that. I told her that she could pick anywhere she wanted to go because it was her career and her life. And she said that the ROTC program at NC State, the way that they welcomed her during her official visit, and how, because she had already been given approved for the Green to Gold Scholarship, how they welcomed her, how they showed her around, and showed her what the program would be like at that university, made her pick NC State over the other 3 universities that she went to visit because they actually cared. So for Wesley and your team here, Colonel Knight, you're building leaders every day. As the CG of Fort Huachuca and the chief of the MI Corps, I have 3 objectives and 1 priority. Objective 1, build leaders. Objective 2, drive change. Change how we're doing training. Change how we're modernizing our force. Objective 3, inform. Tell everybody what we're doing as an intel corps. Because a lot of MI guys, especially at the lieutenant colonel level, have no clue that we're in the midst of the biggest modernization in 40 years. That we're changing training at Fort Huachuca that we haven't changed in 2 decades. DART's got one of the pilot programs going on right now of changing our training for students. My 1 priority is people. It's you. People first, mission always. And I would submit to you, if you take care of your people, you will not have to worry about your mission because they will do your mission. So, I think, yes, ma'am. Yes. We got plenty of time.
Thank you, sir, for coming. I just wanted to make one shameless plug, if you don't mind, sir.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know if this is working, guys. As General Hale said, and as Colonel Hayward said, please give MI a chance, right? And then also consider, if you go active component and you decide when it comes time for you to just make that decision if you're going to stay, please consider doing either Combo 2 or Combo 3, so going to the reserve or the National Guard. You have the same forces within those other 2 combos, and you can continue your career there as well as, continue on in your civilian side. So just give that a consideration.
So let me give her a plug, okay? ForceCom G2, control 80% of the force. Compo 2 and Compo 3. ForceCom controls 2 guard divisions every year. Plus we control Compo 3. We did not fight in Iraq and Afghanistan without Compo 2 and Compo 3. There just was not enough resources. And in today's fight, what we're doing across the globe, which is competition with great power competition, think China, think Russia, we can't do it with Compo 1 alone. We have to have Compo 2 and 3. Just think about all the money the United States Army puts into your training, even if you only stay on active duty for 4 years. Just think of how much better we would be if you went into Compo 2 or 3, if you decided to get out, vice just getting out and we, the Army, having to start over with a new officer or a new enlisted soldier. We've trained you that much already. Give Compo 2, Compo 3 a chance. Because I will tell you, having actually started in the Guard, in the North Carolina Guard in 1988, I learned a lot of things in the Guard that helped me when I went on active duty. Do we have the cadet battalion commander here? Is the cadet battalion commander here? Who's that? Anybody? Cadet Brown, come on up here. Okay, Cadet Brown. for the Bulldog Battalion, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to give you a commanding general coin from the chief of MI. Okay? So that's for everybody in the battalion, okay? Thanks very much. Okay, Wesley, come here. All right, Wesley, so for you and your team, thanks for taking time out for an old guy like me this afternoon. Thanks for everything you do for these cadets every day. And just thank you for building leaders that I told you as we were coming in. I know you're getting ready to go to battalion command, okay? But even for me, 53 years old, 32 years in the Army, when I get to go out and see privates and PFCs or lieutenants or captains out training on Fort Huachuca, doing MDMP, the military decision-making process, and getting ready to brief, it just gives me so much energy to get up and do it again the next day. When I go get up in the morning and do PT and run around Fort Huachuca and see kids out running, you know, it starts at 4:30 in the morning with AIT and all the different classes. We got folks starting PT at 4:30 in the morning. It just gives me so much energy to be around people like you, the future of our Army. Because remember, you wear the best jersey in the world. And don't forget it, okay?
Ladies and gentlemen, if I'm on, ladies and gentlemen, sir, on behalf of the Bulldog Battalion, Lieutenant Colonel Hayward, again, apologies up front for not giving you a proper introduction. My fault on that. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Hayward. This was definitely an awesome opportunity for us, and we're very fortunate. And, sir, are you going to stay here for just a few more minutes in case there's some cadets that had some more questions?
Absolutely.
All right.
We need to take a picture with you and your folks. Okay?
All right. Awesome, sir. We'll definitely form up on stage. So this will conclude kind of the live portion. But cadets, please hang tight. We'll do a quick photo. And also, I'm going to pick out a couple cadets. I have some questions I need you guys to talk to General Hale and Lieutenant Colonel Hayward about. Hey, thank you, everyone. And, again, we'll see you guys for fun, exciting PT coming up soon enough.